You wake up one day and realize nothing outside of you feels real anymore. The job, the relationships, the masks, they're all slipping, and beneath them is a silence so deep it almost terrifies you. But that silence is not emptiness, it's invitation. It's not the absence of meaning, it's the birthplace of everything you were never taught to touch. This is where the shadow begins to whisper, and most people run from that voice because they've been taught that darkness is dangerous. But what if that voice isn't your enemy? What if it's your forgotten self calling you back to power? We've been taught to pursue the light, to heal, transcend, forgive, align, always looking up, always reaching for purity. But no one told us that true power, the kind that shakes the earth and rewrites timelines, lives in the places we were told to avoid. In the ache, in the rage, in the shame, in the grief. The shadow holds not just our wounds, but our codes. And most of us never access them because we're too afraid to turn inward without flinching. But I want to tell you a secret now, one that may change the trajectory of your entire life. Every pain you've been avoiding is not a prison, it's a portal. Not random, not cruel. Each shadow pain is a precise initiation designed to crack open the part of you that's still asleep. And when you meet it not with resistance but with presence, it unfolds into raw, electric power. Not the kind of power that dominates, but the kind that remembers. The power to see clearly, to choose freely, to create without compromise. That's what's waiting for you on the other side of the pain you've been avoiding the most. So let's begin unraveling the first of these 7 shadow pains. The first is the ache of abandonment. Whether you were left emotionally, physically, spiritually, it leaves a wound that screams, you're not worth staying for. It becomes a pattern in your nervous system. You attach too quickly. You push people away. You constantly monitor the room, wondering when they'll leave. This pain doesn't just hurt, it shapes your identity. But here's the deeper truth. The pain of abandonment is the gateway to radical self-holding. When you stop outsourcing safety and begin to anchor it within, you become untouchable. You stop begging for presence and start embodying it. You become the one who never leaves yourself. And from that place, you start to attract not just people but real ones. Ones who meet you where you are because you finally met yourself. The second shadow pain is rejection. It's the sting that says you're not enough. You are too weird, too loud, too sensitive, too much. So you shrink, you perform, you twist yourself into shapes just to be accepted. But rejection, when faced directly, reveals something astonishing. It shows you what parts of yourself you've disowned just to survive. And once you reclaim them, you stop needing to be accepted. You start choosing to be authentic. And authenticity is magnetic in a way performance never could be. The third is the shadow pain of betrayal. Someone you trusted broke something sacred. Maybe it was a parent. Maybe it was a lover. Maybe it was you. Betrayal cuts deep because it severs the illusion of safety. But if you're brave enough to hold that pain without numbing it, you'll uncover a deeper truth. Betrayal activates your inner guardian, the part of you that sees clearly, that sets boundaries like sacred architecture, that no longer ignores red flags in the name of love. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it initiates your sovereignty. And then there's grief, the fourth shadow pain. Grief is not just about death, it's about loss in all forms. Lost time, lost versions of you, lost dreams. We've been taught to rush through grief, to find meaning, to move on. But grief is sacred. It is proof that you loved. It is a portal into the deepest chambers of your heart. When you allow grief to fully move through you, it doesn't shrink you, it expands you. It makes you vast. It gives you compassion, wisdom, depth. Grief is the initiation into emotional mastery. It teaches you how to hold life and death in the same breath. Now pause for a moment. Feel into this. Which of these shadow pains is still living in your body right now? Which one have you tried to outgrow, out-heal, outrun? We rarely ask ourselves this because we're told that looking backward is a waste of time. But what if the treasure isn't ahead of you, but buried beneath your past? What if the future you want can only be built on the foundation of shadow you've refused to claim? The fifth pain is shame, the most silent and insidious of them all. Shame doesn't say I did something wrong. It says, I am something wrong. It wraps around your identity and makes you hide. But here's the truth. Shame is just the scar tissue of a distorted mirror. Someone handed you a false reflection, maybe society, maybe family, maybe religion, and you believed it. But when you meet shame with curiosity instead of judgment, it begins to dissolve. And what's underneath is innocence. Not perfection in nocer, Latin for not harmed. Your original essence. Shame is the lock, innocence is the key. And when you reclaim it, you stop walking through life in hiding. You begin to live in the open, unarmored, unapologetic. This is just the beginning. We've only begun to enter the realm of what's possible when you choose to meet your shadow not as an enemy, but as an ancient guide. There are 2 more shadow pains left, 2 that pierce the deepest layers of your psyche. And together, we're going to walk through them, not to suffer, but to remember. Because on the other side of your pain lies a version of you that doesn't just survive, they command reality.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There is a threshold most people will never cross. Not because they can't, but because they're terrified of what they'll find when they do. That threshold is rage, the 6th shadow pain, the one we were told to fear the most. Anger is dangerous, they said. Control yourself. Be calm. Be kind. And so we obeyed. We swallowed our fury. We smiled through clenched teeth. We meditated while bleeding. But beneath the surface, the fire never died. It only grew colder, denser, heavier until it became a weight we carried in our bones. Rage that is suppressed doesn't disappear. It calcifies. And eventually, it turns inward. Into self-doubt, into depression, into illness, into spiritual disconnection. But here's what no one told us. Rage is sacred. Rage is not the enemy. It's the signal that something holy has been violated, that a boundary has been crossed, that a truth has been silenced. Rage is the heartbeat of justice, the roar of your soul saying, enough. And when we finally stop being afraid of it, when we give it space to breathe, to move, to speak, we don't become violent. We become clear. Rage, when honored, becomes clarity, precision, power. It becomes the fuel that burns away the lie that you are powerless. And this leads us directly to the 7th and final shadow pain, powerlessness, the most paralyzing of them all. The moments when life cornered you, when you were too young, too small, too voiceless to fight back. When something happened to you and there was nothing you could do. This pain lies deep in the nervous system. It's the tremble beneath your confidence, the hesitation before speaking, the quiet voice that says, what's the point? Powerlessness teaches you to shrink, to play small, to wait for permission. It convinces you that force is always outside of you, that you must earn it, chase it, beg for it. But when you finally turn toward that pain, not to relive it, but to reclaim it, something wild begins to emerge. A part of you that was frozen in time starts to thaw. You begin to realize that you're no longer that child, no longer that trapped version of self. And from the ashes of that powerlessness, your rawest force of creation begins to rise. Not control, not domination, but embodied power. The kind that doesn't shout, it radiates. It moves mountains not by force but by frequency. And this right here is the alchemy. When you combine the fire of reclaimed rage with the clarity born from no longer being powerless, you become a force of nature. You stop asking for permission. You stop explaining yourself. You stop waiting to be chosen by the world, because you've already chosen yourself. And the world begins to respond. Doors open. Synchronicities appear. People feel your energy before you speak. your presence becomes undeniable. Not because you become someone else, but because you finally remembered who you are beneath the layers of suppression. Let me ask you something most never dare to consider. What if the thing you've been most afraid to feel holds the exact code you need to step into your highest path? What if your mess is your magic? What if your breakdowns were never failures, but sacred dismantlings meant to break you open? The truth is, we don't become powerful by bypassing pain. We become powerful by meeting it fully. By sitting with the discomfort until it reveals its wisdom. Every single shadow, pain, abandonment, rejection, betrayal, grief, shame, rage, powerlessness is not a block. It's a blueprint, a doorway, a test. And the ones who are willing to walk through those doorways not with fear, but with reverence become the ones this world cannot ignore. Because they are no longer performing light, they are embodying wholeness. They are no longer trying to manifest from desire. They are creating from truth. And that truth has weight. It has gravity. It bends reality. It changes timelines. It heals bloodlines. This is the truth of your dark power. It doesn't come from being fearless. It comes from being fully human, from facing every part of yourself that you were told to avoid and choosing to stand with it instead of against it. So now the question is not, how do I heal this pain? The question is, am I willing to let this pain initiate me? Am I willing to stop running from it and start becoming the person who can alchemize it into power? Because once you do, you don't just become free, you become dangerous in the most beautiful way. You become a living transmission of radical truth, and the world begins to shape itself around your frequency. But this isn't the end, because now that you've remembered your dark power, the next question becomes, how do you live with it? How do you wield it without losing yourself? How do you walk through the world as a force of nature and still remain deeply human, deeply grounded, deeply connected? There comes a moment after the fire has cleared, after the storm of your shadow has spoken, when you're left standing in a kind of stillness you've never known before. It's not peace in the way most people speak of it, it's something deeper. It's the weight of your own becoming. You're not who you used to be. You've seen too much, felt too deeply. You've died and returned, and now you carry your power not like a sword, but like a presence. Quiet, immovable. Not because you've hardened, but because you've integrated. This is the awakened shadow, when your power no longer needs to prove itself, because it is itself. But here's where the journey takes a more subtle, more sacred turn. Once you've reclaimed your shadow, once you've transmuted your pain into power, the question becomes, how do you live with it? Because power, true, embodied, soul-rooted power, is not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't announce itself in spiritual language or dramatic declarations. It breathes, it listens, it chooses. And it knows this: if you don't stay rooted in your humanity, your power will collapse into performance. You'll become the very thing you were healing from. Another mask, another projection, another person who forgot that we are all walking each other home. The awakened shadow doesn't dominate, it witnesses. It doesn't seek to be worshipped, it seeks to see clearly. And that clarity begins with radical responsibility. You begin to own every part of your energy, how you enter a space, how you hold silence, how your words land, how your actions ripple. You understand that being powerful doesn't mean being in control of others. It means being in mastery of yourself, your triggers, your reactions, your choices. Power, once awakened, will constantly ask you, can you hold this much truth without needing to weaponize it? And this is where many fall. Because once you taste power, it's tempting to use it to shield yourself, to keep others beneath you, to position yourself as the healed one, the awakened one, the initiated one. But all of that is still fear, still ego. The awakened shadow knows better. It knows that the real masters are the ones who remain teachable, who sit with the student inside them as reverently as they sit with a teacher, who don't need to dominate a room to be felt, who don't seek to be followed, but to be true. Let me ask you something now, something most people avoid their entire life. Can you hold your power without abandoning your softness? Can you feel your rage and still choose compassion? Can you own your truth and still make space for someone else's? This is the sacred balance. This is the razor's edge. Because when you awaken your shadow, you're not becoming a god, you're becoming whole. And wholeness includes contradiction. It includes the part of you that still doubts, still aches, still questions. That part is not your weakness, it's your anchor. It keeps you human. It keeps you reachable. It keeps you real. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs embodied ones. People who've walked through the fire and didn't lose their ability to feel. People who've held their darkness and didn't lose their ability to love. People who can sit in the mess with someone else and not need to fix it, just be there. This is the medicine of the awakened shadow. You become the person who can hold both heaven and hell inside your heart and still show up with kindness, with presence, with truth. And you begin to notice something profound. People start to shift in your presence. Not because you're preaching or teaching, but because your being is doing the work. You've become a mirror, a tuning fork, a walking invitation to remember. And those who are ready will rise to meet you, not because you pulled them, but because your frequency awakens something dormant within them. But there's more. The awakened shadow doesn't just change people, it changes systems. You begin to dismantle old paradigms just by refusing to play by their rules. You no longer participate in performance. You no longer feed illusions. You no longer shrink to keep others comfortable. And that in itself becomes a disruption, a revolution. The awakened shadow doesn't fight the old. It simply embodies the new. And in doing so, it becomes the blueprint for what's possible. So how do you walk the world with power without losing your humanity? You remember that your power was never meant to separate you, it was meant to connect you to life, to others, to yourself. You remember that your pain was not a punishment, it was a pathway. You remember that your shadow was not a curse, it was a compass. And most of all, you remember this: you are not here to be light or dark. You are here to be true. And truth, when fully lived, is the most powerful force this world has ever known. At some point after the storm has passed and the ashes of your former self have settled, you come to a strange and powerful realization. You are no longer waiting for life to happen to you. You are shaping it, not from a place of control or ego, but from a deeper knowing, a place where shadow and light no longer argue because they've become allies. This is when you stop living reactively and begin living oracularly. You become the oracle, the one who sees, the one who feels behind the veil, the one who has walked through their own underworld and emerged with keys that others didn't even know existed. But let's be clear, this isn't about fortune-telling or mystical theatrics. Being an oracle means something much more grounded and radical. You've developed the inner clarity to read energy in real time. You can feel when something is off, not because someone told you, but because your body knows. You can sense the truth under someone's words. You can feel the direction of a choice before it even unfolds. Why? Because you're no longer clouded by the noise of unprocessed pain. Your inner channel is clear. And from this clarity, you begin to influence reality not through force, but through resonance. When you've integrated your shadow, you're no longer bound by the unconscious loops that used to run your life. You don't fall into relationships to fill a void. You don't chase success to feel worthy. You don't react out of fear, you respond from awareness. And because of this, your decisions carry weight. Your words land deeper. Your intentions ripple across timelines. You become a living architect of energy, subtly shaping the world around you just by being aligned. But here's where it gets almost surreal. The more life begins to mirror you. You think of someone and they call. You set a boundary and doors open where before there were only walls. You speak a truth that scares you and suddenly the right people appear. This isn't magic, it's alignment. When your shadow is no longer in the driver's seat, your soul takes the wheel, and your life becomes a clear reflection of your inner frequency. Let me ask you something wild. What if your reality is not fixed but fluid? What if your integrated self is the tuning fork that tells the universe what song to play? What if the more honest you become, the more precisely reality responds to you? That's not delusion, that's spiritual physics. Reality bends to those who walk in truth, because truth is the foundation of all things. Lies are static, truth is alive. And when you live as the oracle, you're not just following life's path, you're co-creating it, moment by moment, with your presence. But this level of embodiment comes with responsibility. Not fear-based responsibility, but sacred stewardship. Because once you realize your energy impacts the field, you stop throwing it around carelessly. You choose your words with care. You enter spaces with intention. You stop leaking your power into complaints, gossip, or performance. You use your energy like a sculptor uses a chisel with reverence. Because you know every thought, every feeling, every choice is casting a vote for the future you're building. And sometimes, yes, sometimes you'll want to hide again. You'll want to go back to the comfort of numbing, of forgetting, of shrinking. That's okay. That's human. But now, you'll notice it. You'll feel when you're out of alignment. And instead of spiraling, you'll return. Faster, deeper, clearer. Because once you've tasted your own wholeness, nothing less will satisfy you. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing. Willing to keep showing up. Willing to hold your power with tenderness. Willing to listen when your shadow whispers again, because it will. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. You're still becoming. So here we are. You've walked through the 7 shadow panes. You've met the truths most people spend lifetimes avoiding. And now, you carry something rare. Not just wisdom, but presence. You are no longer a seeker. You are the source. You are no longer reacting to life. You are creating it. You are no longer afraid of the dark. You are the dark. You are the dark. And the light. And everything in between. You are the oracle. The living proof that shadow is not the opposite of light, but the doorway to it. Now go shape reality. Silently, powerfully, truthfully.